This is Mark Johnson from Loyalty 360, welcoming to our ongoing Thought Leadership series, where we invite you to hear firsthand insights and perspectives from the thought leadership driving the customer engagement and loyalty industries today. Today we're speaking with Mr. Phil Rubin, CEO and President of rDialogue. Phil has nearly 20 years of strategic marketing experience with an emphasis on loyalty and relationship marketing, integrated communications, partnership development, promotions, and program development. He founded the loyalty practice at Loyaltyworks and led the spin-off into rDialogue, where he has worked with clients including Sprint, leading hotels of the world, Kimpton Hotels, Caribou Coffee, Palm Restaurants, and others. Phil, nice to meet you.
Hey Mark, how are you?
Thank you for joining our Thought Leadership series. I would love to hear a little bit more about rDialogue and your position within the company.
Sure. So rDialogue stands for Relevant Dialogue, and we were really set up because we have seen a void in terms of how brands interact with customers. So my role on a day-to-day basis and on a strategic basis is to really set the direction for what we do, for what we offer to clients, for the nature of the work that we do with those clients, and really to help lead and work with a great team of people that we have here at rDialogue, and obviously along with that, those of our clients.
Phil, the first question we have for you today is, what is the state of marketing, including any unique opportunities and challenges you see for marketers?
The state of marketing, especially in the context of loyalty and relationship marketing, is probably at a real inflection point, and it's one that, with 20 years in and around this space, it's long overdue and something we've been waiting for, but really there's this convergence of things that are making it happen today. It's forcing marketers, and starting with CMOs and in some cases boards of directors and CEOs, to really shift the emphasis away from advertising and acquisition so that there's more of a balance on managing and growing the existing customer franchise that brands have. And so there's less of an emphasis on advertising in the traditional sense, not that that's not still important, and more of an emphasis on data and how data is used not only to be more relevant in terms of the communication and how that brand is delivered and how that brand interacts with customers, but also data for decision making, so that there's much more of an intellectual democracy in terms of how resources get allocated, in terms of what investments get made, specifically with respect to marketing and customers. And the other big thing that's happening is, because of the transparency across channels, brands are less able to compete on price than ever. And so if they're not going to compete on price, they've got to compete on the basis of what their brand represents and how it delivers that value, as well as on how that brand's able to engage and sort of commandeer attention and respect and that dialogue with customers. So customers are becoming a big differentiator in terms of what marketers need to do in successfully growing their business from here.
Great. In traditional push marketing, we measured effectiveness by response rates and CPMs, and the ability to hit as many eyeballs as possible to increase trial and conversion rates. How is today's different, and how do you affect change with a CMO who still may be push-focused?
Well, the best way to affect change is to get them to test new things and look at their business differently with different metrics. So, how do you move from CPM or cost per thousand to the value therein, which is really about what's the cost for an engaged customer and what's the value of that engaged customer. So, broadly speaking, the measures that we like to see used and implemented on a sustained basis really denominate everything in terms of customers. So for a retailer, they might be looking at very transactional metrics. They may be looking at same store sales. Our view and what we try and counsel is to shift that measure so that it's denominating customer and they're looking at same customer sales. And further, if you go back to what the definition of loyalty marketing is, it's really about differentiating value and differentiating investment according to different groups of customers, if not on an idyllic one-to-one basis, at least on a segment basis. So those have pretty radical implications for traditional metrics, whether they're traditional advertising metrics or traditional sales metrics like same-store sales.
Great. How can social, mobile, and other emerging technologies improve the customer experience today?
Well, in a word, the way they need to be employed is through integration. And that integration has to include listening, and that listening leads to collecting data, and that data then needs to be transformed into actionable information across all those channels. So social is a great listening channel. It's also a great interaction channel, but it sets up different expectations that customers have today, so that if they're going to be vocal, for example, in a social channel, they expect the company to hear them, and they expect the company or the brand to hear them not only in that specific interaction, but down the road, and recognize that they are indeed an active customer. It's amazing how many brands still do not collect social handles from customers, whether it's with a social login or it's when they're collecting initial profile data from those customers. So that's a real fundamental shift. Mobile is really just an extension of everything that happens digitally today, and it obviously goes into not just being able to understand whether a customer hears what a brand is saying or responds, but more importantly, where. So it's still amazing how many brands are still not delivering things consistently across channels, even consistently through an email channel alone.
Loyalty 360 believes in a process of expectation matching, the understanding that the consumer's expectation changes based on their engagement with the brand and the stage of the consumer life cycle with the brand. Yet marketers still struggle putting this idea into practice. What is your advice to marketers?
Well, this kind of goes back to this theme of how do you move from the very traditional marketing push and CPM mentality or mass marketing versus going into an approach that's much more personalized. So expectations differ by customer. They differ by customer type. They differ by customer value. They differ by what channels customer interact with the brand with. But most importantly, customers understand where they are in a life cycle in terms of the relationship that they have with that brand, whether it's a new relationship, whether it's a fresh relationship, whether it's a tired and old relationship. And a big part of matching expectations is emotional, and it gets into the ability to recognize customers, empathize and relate to those customers, and do it in a way that, as you said, better matches where they believe they are with respect to their life cycle, not only from a duration in that life cycle or that relationship, but also the value that customer is contributing to the relationship and how that brand is delivering value back to the customer.
How do you believe we best create loyalty when so many of today's technologies are focused on mass acquisition?
Well, part of that involves this broader theme of the shift from not only acquisition but mass marketing to more customer-centered marketing. And I think there's never been a better time to employ technology or even to develop new technology. But like any other business activity or business process, it requires two things. It requires leadership. So in other words, a top-down commitment to being more customer-centric. The other thing it then needs is strategy. And that strategy's got to be wrapped around what's the business strategy, including what is that business trying to achieve, how's it trying to differentiate itself, how can it deliver, and the other corresponding piece is what customers are looking for, where there are unmet needs, and where there are, like the last question that we just talked about, unmet expectations that customers have. And that's where technology plays a vital role in terms of filling those voids to tie and enable the strategy in terms that'll work for the business and ultimately that'll work for the customer.
Great. Well, Phil, thank you very much for taking the depth. Well, I'll just try to close real quick. Sorry. Phil, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. We enjoyed the insights you provided and look forward to getting more from you in the coming year.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you very much. All right, good.